Hi, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chats. Today is March 9th. This is a strange day for me. It was my dad's birthday, and it was also the day that I got engaged to my wife. So we call it Engage-iversary in my house, so it's kind of fun that way. Usually we have sushi or something interesting like that. I'm in Kansas today, in Derby, Kansas, just down the street from Wichita. Tasha Parker's from Wichita, so I was hoping to get together with her. I don't know if we're going to make that happen. Anyway, enough about me. Today we are being joined by Jessica Pugil and Nathan Browning, who are the program chairs for the Independent Consulting Topical Interest Group, or what we call as the acronym IC-TIG. They are going to spend some time today talking about how to consider putting together a conference proposal. I suspect they're going to go through all the different types of presentations you can make and the process of signing in and all that stuff. I can tell you I've been going to the conference for 12 years. I haven't missed one. And, you know, I put in a proposal every time, both for the main conference and now also for the pre-conferences. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me too. But with that, I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to hand it over to Nathan and Jessica, and you guys. Thanks for coming on today. And hello, YouTube world. Thanks for coming in and downloading this video and listening to it on your own schedule.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt, for the introduction. As Matt said, I'm Nathan Browning here with Jessica Pugil, and we're going to hopefully talk about some of the considerations that you all might have for submitting to the conference for this year. We're on a bit of abbreviated timeline compared to last year, so submissions are due later this month. So we're hoping to cover a lot of topics here and get you prepared so there's no surprises when you're ready to submit. So as I said, this is our goal. We want to encourage submissions. So that's number one priority, and also support you in figuring out how you want to get your submission, whether it's with our TIG or with another TIG. So we're going to review the selection process today. So how proposals get selected to become sessions at the conference, and then review the submission process, the online portal that we've been given, and talk about some of the key decisions that can affect your chances of getting that submission selected. And I'll pass it over to Jessica to talk about that selection process.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. It's great to see such a great group of people here. Thanks for coming. So I am the program co-chair with Nathan this year. And the way it works with the IC-TIG is we have two. Someone who's like lived through it once, and then the new person who comes along. And so I'm the person who lived through it once. I was a program co-chair with Mattia Spencer-Rapart last year, and so learned a lot. And so what I thought I would do is share with you what this process is. I want you to understand this is what the process was last year, right? And we don't always know, AEA changes things, but I think fundamentally these are the steps that they do. And one of the things that was helpful to me to learn last year was, now that I understand the process, I feel like I really understand what are the best ways to be able to increase the chances of your conference proposal being selected. So here's the process, right? The AEA opened the portal for submissions, in February, unbelievably early. I guess they're trying to give more time. And as you know, the deadline for that is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on March 22nd, which is about 2 weeks away. So what's happening right now is people are putting in their proposals, and in a minute, Nathan and I are going to go over sort of the key considerations, but I wanted you to see this process so that you could understand why the key considerations are. Once all the submissions are in, each TIG, and there's a bazillion little TIGs, each TIG goes out there and identifies reviewers to review the submissions for IC-TIG. Now, there could be other people, because on the application process, there's an opportunity for anybody to say, I would like to be a reviewer. And so reviewers are selected by AEA, and some of them are the TIG members, and some are not TIG members. And so the reviewers are generally assigned about 5 5 proposals, which with the idea from AEA's perspective is that each proposal in theory should have 5 sets of eyes to review it and rank them. And reviewers are supposed to read each proposal and rank them on a number of things. The most important things is, what is the relevance to the conference theme? As you know, the conference theme this year is the power of story. So as the reviewers are looking at it, they're looking at how well does your proposal relate to that theme. The other thing they want you to rank, the reviewers to rank, is the likelihood that the topic will appeal to an AEA audience or to that particular TIG audience, right? So you've got reviewers looking at not only how it relates to the conference theme, but is this generally a topic that people in AEA or that TIG are interested in? Then if they are members of the TIG to which that proposal is being selected, they also are asked to rank it, how relevant or it will it be to the TIG, right? And so there's 3 considerations that they're looking at in terms of its relevance. And then the other things that they do is they give it your proposal ranking on technical quality and innovativeness. Now I have not seen what they're going to ask reviewers. They have not given reviewers our template yet. So there may be some other considerations that they'll ask to rank, but this relevance to the conference theme, the likelihood that it appeals to the AEA, and the relevance to the TIG are core questions that are always happen, and this technical quality is one too. So once the reviewers rank it, AEA takes all of those reviewer rankings and they give them to the program co-chairs, who are again this year, Nathan and I. At the same time, the AEA tells the TIGs how many conference flights we have, and they also tell us how many slots we have for types of presentations, right? So, you know, we have demonstration types, we've got panel type, we've got multi-paper, we've got all types of different types. So they tell you how many slots, and of those slots, how many can be demonstration and how many can be this and how many can be that. Now, typically, ideally, a TIG gets more proposals than we actually have slots. So there is an element of decision making that Nathan and I will have to make about who is ultimately forwarded to it. Of course, we lean heavily on what the reviewers rank and what they do, but at some point there may have to be some other level of judgment that goes into how something gets selected. And then once we've kind of gone through it and we've figured out, which ones we're going to forward, the program chairs forward the proposals to the AEA, and then we'll let everybody know who has been selected. So that's, the main process. And if anybody wants to interrupt me and ask a question, feel free. So that's basically how it works. And so given that, what does it mean for your own submission? And if you have looked at the portal, I will tell you this year, AEA has selected a much easier portal. If you had to do the portal last year, don't worry, it's so much better this year, so much easier. So last year it was pretty nightmare. This year's pretty easy. The questions are organized in different ways, but basically your submission needs 3 pieces of information. A description of your proposal. What's your title? This proposal category is the type of presentation that you want to give. Does it want to be a workshop? Does it want to be a demonstration? What does it want to be? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And it'll have your abstract and then definitions of your speakers. Then there's that whole section where you have to say, how does it align with guiding principles? What areas of AEA competencies does it fit into? What is the audience level? And then who are the TIGs of interest, right? And then there's just a bunch of other stuff that they're going to ask you. And so we're going to walk through you now the areas that are most important, sort of the strategy ones that are most important that will increase your likelihood of being selected. So Nathan, you want to take on this one?
Yes. So one of the most important things that AEA is looking for is a cohesive theme across all of the different sessions that come in. And so there's a lot of creative ways to make, your idea fit into this theme of the power of story. And people often find a lot of creative ways, or maybe it's inspirational and you think about how stories have affected your evaluation practice or your consulting practice. And so as Jessica mentioned, this criterion of aligning to the conference theme actually gets rated. And so this is very important. A lot of people like do it in their title, which is always a fun little like puns and things like that that relate to the theme. And so that's one big way that people do it. But you know, there's a bunch of different ways, but this is one of the biggest things that you'll have to look at is making sure it aligns with the conference theme.
Absolutely. Great. The other consideration is what TIG that you're going to submit to. So this is really important. I do not know why, but they tell you to select 2 TIGs that you want to submit it to. But the reality is it really only goes to 1, or at least that was last year's reality, right? So you want to be really careful about what TIG you're going to put it into, because it's going to increase your chances. So for example, I think Susan said she does a lot of health evaluations. She may have the most amazing health evaluation that she's did, and I know that she is a very loyal and active participant with the IC-TIG, but she will increase her chances of being selected if she puts that in for the health TIG rather than the IC-TIG, right? So we tend to, the IC-TIG tends to be very interested in sessions that focus on what it's like to work as a consultant, how to become a consultant, what it's like to work as a consultant, or how to build a consulting practices. So if you want to talk about that kind of stuff, you should definitely think about the IC-TIG. And then the AEA, here's just this list, and this is not unbelievable, not the full list of TIGs here. This is just a sample of the TIGs. So if you're not sure which one you want to do, go on the AEA website, and there's a little discussion of each TIG, and that will help you figure out where's the best chance. Now, it is possible that if you assign, so if we see, for example, that you've assigned your proposal to the IC-TIG, and we see that you've also said health, if we get a chance to look it through quickly and see that we're not going to be able to accept everything, we can reach out to the health TIG and say, hey, we want you guys to consider this one, and we can forward it on. But the success of that strategy really depends on how much time they give each TIG to review the proposals. So that is something we can do. It didn't happen very much last year because we didn't have a lot of time, right? But you know, certainly I think we understand the routine now a little bit more and can try to be a little bit more active on that. Okay, and Nathan has some other ideas
about that previous slide too. That when we've talked about how, you know, some submissions that people might be interested in could fit perfectly equally into separate TIGs, and so you think, oh, I'll submit to this one, and they'll do a co-sponsored session, which is something that does happen. The problem with co-sponsored sessions is that they count against each TIG's total amount of sessions that they're allowed. So what happens is it ultimately reduces the number of sessions that each TIG would be able to sponsor, and that makes that less likely for TIGs to be able to collaborate together in accepting those. So we really recommend submitting to one, and then the second one would be like, if it might not get accepted, then they can refer it out, but then it happens sort of after the fact. So really that first one that you select is really important, and that's probably the place it will end up if it ends up anywhere. So this question of which TIG to submit to is a pretty important one. I was looking through the past, we were kind of questioning, like, you know, we have a lot of members in the IC-TIG, and we only get 8 slots roughly. We don't know how many this year, but last year we only got 8 slots. And so we're trying to figure out how the conference, and someone here might know this, but I have an email out to AEA to ask, you know, what is like the algorithm that's used to determine the amount of sessions for a given TIG. And if we know that, then we can sort of plan ahead in some ways, because you can see that in the screenshots here, this is, oh, and I'll post this link here.
Nathan, I can answer that question kind of. I think
ahead.
that they're not going to tell you exactly, because they're always trying to figure out how many rooms they need and things like that. They give they base their percentage of sessions not based upon members, but based on the number of submissions, proposal submissions. So that's why we always used to, one of our metrics for the TIG when I was TIG chair back in the day was how many proposal submissions did we receive? Because that's an indicator of that's one of the quality indicators that they use internally to AEA. And it's also because then they know, hey, here's an active TIG. Assessment in higher education gets a lot of submissions because there's a lot of faculty types who submit to that. And so that's good for assessment in higher education, but they have a very low number. They actually end up getting more they get more submitted sessions at AEA because of the number of proposals that are submitted, whereas ICTIG has a lot of members and a much fewer submissions for proposals. And so what I've always tried to do is encourage people to give lots of proposals, which is great why you're here today, because then we get more spots in the program. It's really a percentage of the number of proposal submissions.
Perfect. That's good to know.
Well, so if that's the case then, right? Last year the ICTIG got about 30 submissions, and they gave us a quarter of the slots, right? They gave us 8. So you, and I think that's the other reason why we're really encouraging you to think carefully about the TIG, is we can go through, because if we know we're not going to have that many things, we can forward some of the other things that might fit to other TIGs. But I think historically we've been frustrated. Is it correct, Matt, that historically we've been frustrated that the ICTIG doesn't get many slots?
I think historically we've been frustrated with AEA. Period. No, that's if you go far enough back, I mean, we used to get 70, 80, 90% acceptance rate. They would deny like 1 or 2. So
okay, things change.
And I'll offer this out there too, both accepted and unaccepted submissions. If you as the program chairs think it's something of quality that you're interested in, you should refer it to us, and we can make sure we give that person an audience through the IC topic chats.
Yes, that is a great, no offense, secondary option for people that have these interesting proposals that are working through.
I think in some ways it's a better option, because I think we get a better audience, but that's just me saying that.
And so I posted this link in the chat. You can look at last year's conference searchable program. You can filter by TIG and see what kinds of sessions were accepted. Those are probably going to be pretty similar. The reviewers for TIGs are similar from year to year. You can also look at the number that were accepted. And so if we got this rough benchmark around 25%, then there are certainly going to be some really, really competitive. I mean, all of them are going to be competitive as a proportion. But the collaborative participatory and empowerment had almost 50 sessions last year. So if they had a 25% acceptance rate, you can only imagine the sheer number of sessions that were actually submitted. And so this is one way to think about, if there's a lesser known TIG that kind of fits, some ways that you might make your proposal more competitive by selecting the right TIG.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan, just to put a fine point on that, I think the TIG, Lisa Kay, who was the chair of the IC TIG last year, I think she told us that about 20,000 conference submissions were submitted last year. Just to give you a sense of it, right? There's a lot of conference submissions. So there's a lot that has to be weeded through, right? Okay, so here's the other thing that you want to be thinking about, right? And this makes a difference too, is what type of presentation you want to make. As I said, after the reviewers have submitted their reviews and AEA sends it to the program co-chairs for us to make some final decisions, they tell us how many slots, and they can tell us how many slots we can have in each thing. Now, last year, and I do not know if this is going to be the case for this year, but last year we could have unlimited birds of a feather topics. So if anybody who put in for birds of a feather there, and they had a reasonably high ranking, they got in, right? So that was the case. I believe that is also true with the posters, right? You can have, and that's a function of space in a room and stuff like that. I think that there are no restrictions to the Ignite. I can't quite remember. We didn't have any Ignite proposals last year, but again, those are quick and things, so there's a lot of that. How the professional development workshops are selected, I don't know. I don't think those ever came to us. That was a non-issue for us. So then here were the other ones. Oops, I didn't put demonstration. Demonstration somehow fell off of this. Here are the ones where they told us how many we could have. And, somebody last year put in a multi-paper. Can I say who that somebody is? Somebody in this group pulled in a multi-paper that is a highly popular topic, but we were told we had no multi-paper slots. So even though that proposal got a lot of high marks and stuff like that, we had to drop it because we had no slots for that multi-paper. Now, do I understand why we got no multi-paper slots? No, I do not. I don't understand why we got what we got, but that last year, that was this. Yes, it was Matt's wonderful IC-TIG, the things that we do every year that everybody's loved. I think for this was the first time that you submitted as a multi-paper. Oh, it was called Meet the Pros, right? I think it was the first time you submitted as a multi-paper, Matt. And so anyways, we could not accept it because we were not given any multi-paper things. So you just need to think about it. If you've got a topic and you really, really, really want to get in, put in for birds of a feather poster, right? I did mine as a bird of a feather last year and had so much fun. And it was really fantastic. And we had a really great thing. So do think carefully about the kind of presentation. I don't want to scare anybody off from these other ones. The demonstrations, the think tanks, these are important. These are very popular sessions. So I really don't want to scare you off of those. But I just tell you, we only have so many slots that we're given for each one, right? Kelly asked about what is a birds of a feather topic. So Birds of a Feather is a place where you go into a big ballroom at the conference and each topic has a table. And that table is a topic. And basically when people come, they go sit at the topic that they're interested in, hence the Birds of a Feather. I'm a bird that likes the feather that you are, and I want to talk about what you want to talk about. I had something like 8 people at my table, and it was a really fantastic conversation at my table. So it doesn't have sort of the weight of having a big old presentation. Of course, you do have to have some guidelines about what you're going to say. Oh, look, Jen Ward is offering some great suggestions. So, you want to have a topic and some guidelines about how you're going to have a conversation, but it's not like a proper presentation. You're at a table and you're leading a discussion at a group. You want to take the next question from Michelle? Can you see her question, Nathan? Does it matter if the session proposals? Yeah.
I do not think it matters, mostly because the reviewers aren't going to know, because it's a blind review process. The only things they'll know is whether, any of the questions that we go through is all the information that they'll be able to receive.
Oh, that's a good question. Has anybody submitted it? Can you check more than one box or only one category? Does anybody know? I don't think that's possible. I think you have to bite the bullet and pick one. But that's a really darn good question. Okay, any other questions about these? Again, there's some level of strategy to the TIG that you pick and this type of presentation. So be mindful of that. Great.
So one other question they'll ask you is, how does your session align with the guiding principles? And in the past, AEA said they don't use this as an evaluation question for which ones get accepted. It's mostly just for internal data collection for them to kind of know where the values of the sessions are aggregating toward, if that makes sense. And so there's 5 of the guiding principles listed here that you can select as to which ones that your proposal aligns with. I'm not going to read through all of them. They're there for the taking, and it ultimately has just a small, just for something you be prepared to know that this question will be coming. Not too high stakes though.
Same thing with these professional competencies. This doesn't, reviewers do not pay any attention to this in the review process. And so maybe this is one of those things that the AEA uses for their own internal analysis or something, but it is something that you are required to check. And so we're putting it here just so that you can know what are the different domains that they ask you to put your thing into. So again, it's not going to make a difference in how you're selected, but it is a part of the application process, and you're going to want to be ready to know how you want to select that.
And one other question you'll be asked is, what is the sort of level of audience that this type of information is appropriate for? Is it more of that entry level or beginner level information that is easily accessible for those beginner levels, and maybe is too beginner for some of the more advanced levels? And then it goes up the scale. And there's also an option to select for anyone can benefit from coming to this, or any level of audience in terms of their experience or their background. So that is one other component that you'll be asked about as well.
And this will not have anything to do with your ranking, but it will be posted in the discussion about your thing. So it really is, I think you need to pay attention to this to think, who do you want to be at your session? Because I certainly look at this to figure out, do I want to be at a session? So this is really about how do you attract the people that you want to your session? So I think that's a pretty important one. Great. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff that they're going to want to ask you to do. Are you willing to present a poster? I think that must be above and beyond your thing. I find this a kind of a weird question, but that's a yes, no. Are you a first-time submitter? That's a yes, no question. And again, I think this is more for AEA's internal analysis. Are you a student, and are you willing to write a blog post? One of these questions here that isn't on this is, will you be a reviewer? And we would love it for anybody who wants to be a reviewer to say yes. Now, so please say yes on this if you're interested. When the conference deadline closes, we're going to reach out to all the ICT members and ask specifically for reviewers as well. And we will submit a list of ICTIG reviewers to the AEA that they will add to anybody else that opts to be a reviewer. But I think it's really important for you to understand that it's not just ICTIG people reviewing ICTIG proposals. You know, of course, we're going to try to have most of them in there, but the AEA is the one who assigns the reviewers. We don't have any control over who gets assigned what. So we will seek a slate, and we'll be reaching out to everybody here, plus more, to ask you to be a reviewer. If you want to let us know now in the chat, that would be great. We'll just go ahead and start a list now for anybody who would like to be a reviewer. It's not that much of a burden. I really encourage you to be a reviewer. It's super great. Generally, if you are a reviewer, AEA will probably assign you anywhere between 3 to 5. Now, the other thing I want you to know is, you know, AEA tries to get a lot of eyes on every proposal, but not every reviewer reviews everything that they're assigned. So it's quite possible that some of these presentations will only see 2 or 3 reviews. That does not factor into anybody's decision making, but you know, it is something for you to be mindful of.
The very last question that you'll be asked is to basically agree to the submission conditions. If you've ever bought a house and you went to the title office and they basically read you all the things in lay speak because you don't understand the contract legalese, I'll be that person for you right now. Basically, this says, if you submit, we expect you to attend and present. You're not getting any special treatment for attending and presenting, including any discount or any other recognition other than submission in the conference program. Your contact information can be there unless you decide otherwise. You have to contact us to do that. And it will be made to the public in certain ways, and I approve to that. That's basically what this says. And don't sue me if I misappropriated it, please. And I think
Nathan, a
that's
couple of years ago, a lot of the reason this is so complicated is because there was a rumor, and I believe it was only a rumor, that the submission conditions included yielding your intellectual property for the material that you were presenting. And I believe that that's been resolved, that that is not the case. And so it created a whole bunch of frustration and hubbub on eval talk and everything like that. People started like saying they were going to, you know, boycott the conference. It really got out of hand, and it became actually an expensive problem for AEA to manage. I think that there was a statement that was taken out of hand that could have been taken by a lawyer to mean that, but it was never intended by AEA, and that's part of the reason why you see this being so complicated here. But I do want to make sure people understand you are not yielding your intellectual property around the material that you're presenting. If it's recorded, they're going to ask you in advance if you want it to be recorded. If you make it into one of the conference sessions that's been accepted by, like, the presidential series, and they may want to use and perhaps even sell the recording of your session in the future, but you don't have to agree to that. Just be aware that that's what that hubbub was about in the past, and that's why this is such a complicated statement here, because several lawyers who charge a lot of money per hour had to get involved with this process.
Great. So that's it for us, unless anybody has any questions.